Hey guys, I'm Sabbat. I am a Fire Mage player who does both Raid and High Keys if you are new to the channel, and this is going to be my 12.1 wish list. We've got PTR hopefully on the horizon, and I want to throw some ideas out into the universe here. Hopefully it ends up in front of the right people. I'm going to split this into kind of two sections. One is going to be more focused on Mage as a class, and that's going to be mostly a conversation around defensives. And then the second part will be fire specific, and that's going to be focusing more on the fire tree and how fire feels to play right now and some stuff that I think could make the class a little bit more engaging. First off, on the defensive side, mages have two main problems that are both contributing to their lack of survivability in both raid and high keys, and that is that they are playing on a low HP bar. They are very vulnerable to one-shots, and they don't have enough buttons to get through all of the one-shot combos that kill them that other classes have to worry about. So we're going to look to address that with a couple recommendations here. The first is not a new idea. It has been suggested already many times, and I am here to just reinforce that. Double barrier should be universal across all mage specs. The fact that only Frost gets access to double barrier is a defensive mismatch that I think anybody that plays Frost versus the other two mage specs could agree with. Frost can get the second ice cold charge, that can be kind of their niche, whereas Fire gets caught and Arcane gets a good barrier, but I think all the mage specs should have double barrier because 2 charges is actually so good because you can bank them for when you really need them, right? Right now, for me playing Fire, if there are 2 mechanics that kill me in one hit within 25 seconds of each other, I either need to ice cold the second or I need to get an external. Right? And this happens more frequently than you would think in 21s. So double barrier would smooth that out a lot. It would allow you to just press 1 to deal with group damage if there's only one thing you're worried about having barrier for potentially coming up in the future, or if you know that you are going to be very stressed, there's a high damage or high probability of one-shot mechanics coming up in the future. You know you have that option, right? So that's suggested number 1, double barrier for all mage specs. 2, I would like to see mass barrier return, but slightly modified. It was cool to have group utility available for the party. However, there was a definite mismatch in how useful mass barrier was between Arcane and then Fire and Frost, right? Arcane's prismatic barrier giving the group a 25% magic DR was wildly better than just the raw barrier value that Fire and Frost is able to provide. So my recommendation for that is remove the extra effects from the barrier for each spec. Just have mass barrier be its own spell ID that puts a static barrier amount on the whole group. It's not crazy, it's not busted like a 20% DR like AMZ or Zephyr or something like that is, but it's still a way that the mage can contribute to group survivability and wouldn't have that mismatch between Arcane's mass barrier being wildly stronger than Fire or Frost's. When we're on the topic of spec-specific barriers, the Fire barrier is just ass compared to the other two. The on-hit melee stuff is next to worthless, and you get 15% of the barrier value as healing. So you 30% of your health is a barrier, and then 15% of that heals you. That means a whopping 4.5% of your health is what your barrier will heal back. And usually because you barrier at full HP to live something before it hits you, all of that healing is usually overhealing. So that value should probably be like minimum doubled, because that's what it was like back in just one expansion ago. Diverted barriers was 40% of the barrier value was healing. Ice cold, this is an interesting one to bring up because this might be a bit divisive. A 70% DR for 6 seconds. You are very unkillable during those 6 seconds, but then it falls off and you're back to vulnerable territory. I think it would be smoother and easier to play while still being reasonable if the duration of ice cold was extended to 8-9 seconds maybe, and the DR was nerfed to compensate. Let's say 50. Let's say 50% for an 8-second DR. Still a strong wall. It's still going to keep you alive through all but the most lethal damage situations, but the extra 2 seconds would go a long way to smoothing out high damage intake that occurs over more than a 6-second period, right? You have to be very precise with the ice cold usage to get maximum value from it right now. And I would happily trade some DR value for just additional duration so that we have just more safety, and it would be more in line with like other classes' big walls that typically last potentially, you know, might be 30 or 40%, but they usually last twice, if not more, longer. All this ties back into the core issue though with Mage, and that is that we are very vulnerable to one-shots, and that's because we're playing base HP, and the only passive DR on the tree is an 8% magic damage reduction, which is strong for 2 points, but doesn't affect physical damage. And because we don't have any extra stamina or built-in reactive stuff, you are still just very vulnerable, and you're a clothy, so physical damage just shreds you. The simplest way to address that would be give Mage Stam, and while I think that would potentially solve some of the issues, I think it's a bit uninspired, and I think we can do better. And I think I have a flavorful idea here that would fit in with the Mage fantasy while fixing some of those one-shot problems, and that is to give Mage a kind of time-themed stagger. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but let's just say 10% of the damage that you take gets added as a debuff and dealt over the next 4-5 seconds. Doesn't have to be a really long time, but you just get that little 10% of the total damage, you know, shuffled away into this dot, staggered away into this dot. What this would do is it would raise that one-shot potential by basically a key level, and just give you a little bit more effective HP to play with. It would also allow healers and yourself to react to you going low, and now you have a couple seconds, assuming there's not another instant hit of damage that kills you, to get some healing, press a pot, reactive barrier, any of those things. And I feel like this is a cool, flavorful way to do it, because it could be like a time-themed, you know, we're manipulating time to delay our damage over the next couple seconds. And I think this works better than some of the other suggestions I've heard, like add a DR to alter time, or put a DR back on mirror images. As much as I mean, mirror is kind of a useless button right now, but I don't particularly want another button to hit. I think Blizzard's design goals in reducing the amount of buttons that you need to think about as Mage is like it's a good goal. Their iteration of it here in the first patch of Midnight has certainly missed the mark, but reducing the amount of options as Mage, especially when like you had 3 buttons or 2, you know, G-Invis was just a crappier ice cold. Mirror was just a weird way to get the same effective health pool as some of the other classes in the game that don't have to press anything. I think just giving us a bit of one-shot protection would go a long way, and that kind of temporal stagger thing would go hand in hand with making alter time easier to use, because it would just make the damage on you a little bit less spiky and a little bit more reactable. Even just that 10% can go a long way. But I realize that this is kind of a out there concept, so if you think this is the greatest thing you've ever seen, or the worst idea in your life, let me know in the comments below. And if you're liking the idea so far, please like, subscribe. I don't normally say this stuff, but this type of video I would love to see go places, because it's kind of focused. I want to see some stuff for Mage get implemented in 12.1, and so I'd love for the reach of this video to go crazy. So okay, that was the defensive side of the tree. Let's shift focus here to the fire specific stuff. So a couple goals here I think that could improve the fire side of the tree. First and foremost, we do almost no damage out of cooldowns. It's nice to have a lot of burst, and I do not want to go back to having the flat SKB profile at all, but I do think our filler being more important and satisfying would feel better especially in keys, but also to some degree in raid. Like if you can't get your cooldowns to line up with periods of important damage, it would be nice to still contribute there. Blizzard's response to this has been to buff Fireball if they feel like our filler is low. This is not the right decision in my mind, because we just end up chain casting Fireball 3 or 4 times before we eventually get a crit thanks to overflowing energy. What I think we can do just to make filler maybe a little bit more engaging is twofold. One is to add a baseline crit percentage to this, or to Fireball specifically, right? Just giving Fireball like this spell has, you know, 20% increased chance to crit or something. Nerf the damage to compensate, but this would make it to where there would be less Fireball chains where you get unlucky and cast 3 or 4 times in a row before you get a heating up. And that would lead to just converting more hot streaks and getting a couple more pyros and flame strikes in filler, which would be, I think, just more engaging than the current filler is right now. The second suggestion is to add some kind of button. Some kind of button that gets pressed not all that often, but often enough. And I think the answer to this is actually going to be Living Bomb. On a 25-second cooldown, very specific number here. Why 25, you're saying? That doesn't line up nicely with a minute-long combustions, right? Well, 25 is just long enough to where you could like never get 2 of them in combustion at all. If you high rolled your fired up extensions at like a 20-second cooldown, for example, you'd have to try to get the second Living Bomb in if it was tuned appropriately to do good damage. Whereas with this, it's only ever 1. Cool. Additionally, with 25, you get some leeway in your off combustion press, right? Or alternatively, if it's tuned well enough, I mean, you might just be pressing it on CD and sometimes it's in combustion, sometimes it's not. But what this lets you do is you can press that second one right at 25. Or you can delay it up to 10 seconds and still have it right before your next combustion again. And it's like, if anyone has played Frostfire with this talent, right, where the meteor is on exactly a 30-second CD, that middle meteor, that out of combustion meteor, has to get pressed like on the second, or it just gets more and more delayed, and it feels really awkward. And I would want to avoid the same experience with this hypothetical Living Bomb. And I think this Living Bomb should be tuned to do okay damage in single targets where you'd still press it. But I would love to see some of the AoE shifted out of Flame Strike and into something like Living Bomb so that it unlocks more of the Fire Mage that people want to play in keys, which is you're pyroing something and you're still doing competitive overall. Not topping, but ethical priority damage right on a target. You're spreading ignite from it and shifting some power out of Flame Strike and into a button like Living Bomb that we could make, you know, absolutely slap at higher target counts, would be a really satisfying button to press. It would also give us a little bit of extra damage out of that combustion with that kind of off with the non-combustion use of it. All right, I have beef with this talent, Intensifying Flame, okay? Because you would think that it's here to be an amazing lever for our 3-target tuning, but Blizzard doesn't touch this. And it's very binary in that it stops working as soon as ignites on a 4th target. And believe it or not, the damage between 3 and 4 targets is almost the same, even though you're adding a whole nother target to spread ignite to, which is wild, by the way. Just because Int Flame stops working, it just turns off. So like adding that extra target, it's not nearly the same amount of game. I would love this to turn into something way cooler, and that cooler thing would be, you know how Fuel the Fire right now gives you 5% increased damage for each target that Flame Strike hits, up to 25%? What if this was like 3% more pyro damage for each target affected with ignite, up to like 15 or something, right? So adding targets makes you do more pyro damage, which gives you funnel. And funnel is fun because that means pulling stuff into bosses and stuff, or like when ads spawn, it's not just a, hey, I can pad off these ads, I can spread ignite to them. It's like, sick, these are here, these are going to actually juice up my single target and help me kill something that I'm trying to kill even better. And that amped up pyro buff feeds right back into the ignite spread, right? On that topic, remove this 25% thing from Fuel the Fire and just tune Flame Strike as a button that at higher target counts, if you want to do the maximum overall flat damage to everything, you flame strike. But if there's a prio target, you can sacrifice some, not what it is currently, which is a large amount of overall, between any target counts between 6 and like 12. Some overall to do prio damage, right? To pyro and then living bomb as suggested, right? I feel like this would be way more fun to play. You would feel way more ethical in keys. Would give you a much better profile for Mythic Plus and potentially Raid 2. Now here's the last one. This one's a bit of a cook, so bear with me. We have this talent. It's called Burnout. When your combustion expires, whatever your ignite bank is on every target, 75% of that just pops for that damage. It doesn't consume it. It just does 75% of the ignite bank on any target that has ignite. First suggestion, make this a button. All right, this is a button you get to press, and those nerds over in the Mage Discord can figure out exactly when the optimum moment to do this is in the rotation, right? That's going to be for the robot to decide. Here's cook number 2. Don't make it a minute. Make it 2 and like double this, okay? Now we have some variation and some stuff to move around. We get a real big burnout pop on demand every other combustion. Make this 150%. And also, if we're playing this ignite build where we're more focused on pyroing something and spread ignite, this is going to truck, and that's going to feel really fun to press. Really fun to press, right? I can see it being like, you know, when you have this burnout button available, you're pyroing, and then like 3 seconds before you want to press it, you living bomb, or maybe it would be 6 seconds before you want to press it, you would living bomb, and then like 2 seconds before you want to press it, you would meteor, and then like right after the meteor lands, you would slam the burnout, and you would just see numbers everywhere, you know, huge ignite bank built up, and then, you know, turned into this massive slam. I think that would be really fun. I think that would be a cool skill expression thing. It would absolutely ruin the chance that we're ever taking anything on the right side of the tree if that were the case. So maybe the talent positions would have to move around, but I've actually really enjoyed Burnout as a concept. I think it's cool talent, and I would love to see it get like more central to how fire plays. So, all right, that's going to be it for now. I thought about addressing the hero trees, but I think that might need to be its own video, as this one I feel like is maybe dragging on a little bit too long. We'll hit that soon. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your support. If you thought these ideas were terrible, please tell me and tell me why. I'm curious to see other people's perspectives. If you think there's stuff that's amazing, tell me that too, so that I can put it on a manifesto and mail it to Blizzard. In any case, like and subscribe. The algorithm, I want this one to hit the algorithm, guys, so your engagement will help me here. If you think it's good ideas in here, the best thing you can do is engage with the video. Come check me out on Twitch. It's GM_Sabbat. I'm streaming pretty much every day. Right now, a lot of keys, raid on Tuesday, Thursday. Come say hi, come ask questions. We got a great community over there. I'd love to see more people drop in. And thank you again, all my viewers. You guys have been awesome. The growth of this channel has been extremely encouraging. We just hit 500 subscribers this week, which is like quadrupling the size in like a month and a half. So thank you, everyone. I hope this video finds you well and that you take it easy and have a great rest of your night. Thank you.